Hi everyone. So last week we looked at getting started writing your rhetorical analysis paper, and in particular we looked at introductions and thesis statements. It's obviously also really important to think about how we structure our paragraphs and the best way to structure our overall paper. So before I get started looking at individual papers, you'll remember that when we wrote our summaries, I really emphasized the importance of not doing a chronological play-by-play approach, and that's also the same for how we look at the rhetorical appeals. So again, you don't want to look at more than 2 rhetorical appeals in your segment 2 paper. So you might look at either logos and pathos, you could look at pathos and kairos, maybe ethos and pathos. Any combination is fine, but no more than 2 of those appeals. Otherwise it becomes kind of like a shopping list and you don't get a chance to really analyze the use of the rhetorical appeals in detail. It's really important to structure by idea. You don't want to write a paper that takes a chronological approach. For instance, first Julia Gillard appeals to her audience's sense of emotions. Then she introduces facts and statistics, which is an example of logos. Then she goes back to an emotional approach. So you don't want to do that. You really want to have, say, an introduction, introduce an appeal, and looking at, say, one example of it. Maybe if you're doing pathos, you could look at one type of emotion. In the next paragraph, you could look at another type of emotion. Then you could look at your next appeal, say logos, and again, use one example. And then in the next paragraph, use a different sort of approach to achieving this sense of logos, and so on. So you really want to group it by appeal, not chronologically. So let's start looking at how we would approach writing our paragraphs. So after you've written your introduction, you need to start building your argument through evidence and analysis. So one big mistake that students make in the rhetorical analysis paper is that they use way too much evidence. So it's really important to remember that I'm most interested in your ideas, and of course it's important to use evidence to back up your claims, but you really want to start thinking about the ratios of topic sentence to evidence to analysis. So this little aid memoir, T, stands for topic sentence, evidence, and analysis. And that's a really great way to structure your paragraphs. You may have learned it in high school, and it's just really useful to start off with a topic sentence, because if you ever notice a paragraph without a topic sentence, it's much harder to read. If a student introduces evidence straight away, I don't know what that evidence means or why they've introduced it. I have to work harder to understand what the student is saying if they don't start off a paragraph with their own basically a summary of their argument of what the point of this paragraph is. So essentially a topic sentence is like, a summary of your main argument in that paragraph. So topic sentences are kind of like a roadmap for the reader. They guide the reader through your argument for that paragraph, and it just makes it so much easier to understand then why certain evidence is introduced. So always start off with a topic sentence and make sure that it's specific. So really hone your argument in that topic sentence in a concise way, and then you can elaborate through the evidence and your analysis at the end of the paragraph or after the evidence. So the E in the T acronym stands for evidence, and in order to prove your topic sentence, you need evidence. So the type of evidence you use depends on the genre and purpose of the paper. For a rhetorical analysis paper, you can have a mix of paraphrasing and quotations. In a position paper, like an argument paper, you might have multiple different types of evidence. For the rhetorical analysis, you're only looking at the source text, so you don't need to do research beyond the speech for this. Be sure to introduce your evidence with author tags, like in the summary, and use quotation marks for direct quotes so your audience knows the source of the evidence. And really important, and this is another thing that students often leave out, they'll often just end a paragraph with evidence, not doing any of their own analysis, when at the university level, professors are most interested in your ideas and your arguments. So never ever forget to provide some analysis and make sure that it's meaningful. So don't just restate sort of something really obvious in your topic sentence. You want the analysis to link to the topic sentence. It should match in some way, but you need to go more in depth than the topic sentence. So evidence can't stand on its own. 2 people may read the exact same quotation or statistic and come away with very different ideas of what that means. Therefore, you need to analyze your evidence, explain how it backs up your paper's larger argument and your introduction, thesis statement, and your paragraph's topic sentence. So this is where everything comes together, and you prove your main idea. And yeah, really important to make sure that you're being clear, that your argument is really easy to understand, that it connects back to that thesis statement in the introduction. So let's look at an example. So this is from a speech by Michelle Obama. So a student has done a rhetorical analysis of this speech, and here the student, I'll read out this paragraph. I want you, after I read this paragraph out, to head over to Canvas, so pause this lecture, screencast, head over to Canvas, and I want you to try to identify the topic sentence, the evidence, and the analysis, then come back and listen to the rest of the screencast lecture. So I'll read this out, and then you pause, do the activity, come back, and I will talk you through the answer. So the student's body paragraph for this rhetorical analysis says, In order to effectively establish exigence about nutrition, Michelle Obama relies on her dual credibility to emphasize both the personal and nationwide importance of her issue. She wants to convince her audience of health advocates, food industry executives, and most importantly, marketers, that implementing changes to the marketing industry is important. Obama uses her position as First Lady to create an authoritative exigence and dismiss any doubts as to whether this issue is deserving of attention. She references her numerous visits to various cities around the country and the widespread dietary changes being adopted there. According to Obama, the US as a country is undergoing a, quote, cultural shift, a, quote, transformation in how we live and eat, and now is the ideal time to effect change. Her experiences as First Lady enable her to believably communicate that a countrywide change is occurring. Her goal is to convince marketers that their cooperation will be met with support throughout the nation, and her status as First Lady is crucial to her making this point. Her perspective allows her to reassure concerned marketers that their cooperation will be met with positive reactions from fellow companies and consumers. So, pause, go over to the Canvas activity, and I want you to identify the topic sentence, the evidence, and the analysis, remembering that a topic sentence